Criminal investigation. When you hear those words put together, you might think that we're talking about the current political affairs of both parties. But no, we're talking about the Walt Disney Company. We're talking about the situation in Florida, where an inspector general has been called upon, under the direction of the attorney general and the governor of the state, to look into perhaps the mismanagement of millions and millions of dollars, and, dare we say it, an inappropriate relationship between a corporation and a local government or governments. This gets very messy and very spicy. It's even difficult to talk about it, but folks, that's what you expect us to do, so buckle in and hang tight. We're going to talk about the fight that Disney is in with criminal implications. All right, folks, welcome back to another video. This one, unlike most on the WDW Pro channel, we do not endeavor to send you down rabbit holes and chases and trails and crazy sidebars that end up not bringing any kind of truth or fruition to you. No, we believe in bringing you veracity and truthfulness at every single corner. And today we're talking about a topic that is actually tough for us to do. We're talking about the legal ramifications for the Walt Disney Company as they are now facing, allegedly, criminal investigation in the state of Florida. We have brought on an attorney, Andrew, of Legal Mindset, to talk with you, me, and everyone else about what is going on. What is the kind of danger that Disney finds itself in? And lest you think that we just have some random lawyer on, no. Andrew has actually specialized and worked with special districts of Florida, which is the exact thing that Disney is accused of having perhaps mismanaged and even controlled in a way that could be illegal. Disney World is potentially now under criminal investigation by the state of Florida regarding their capture of a government entity, that being Reedy Creek. We are going to take a look at something, though, that, Andrew, you have not seen yet, I don't believe. Maybe you have, but this is going to be fascinating to see what all of your takes are on this. Let's take a look here at some of the stuff that people have been sending our way. This, at the top, is a Reedy Creek name tag. Another version of that same Reedy Creek name tag. Now, we cannot fully verify this just yet, and we're going to get another look at this. Zoom in, see if it'll let us zoom in. It's as close as it'll let us go, but you can see there John. Yeah,
it's John Classy, who is the former district administrator. I met him, actually.
Stay classy.
He was wearing a Reedy Creek name tag, which is it's close to, right? So it's akin to the Disney style, but it is specifically a Reedy Creek name tag.
Now, here's what we're being told, Andrew, that makes this a little interesting, and I think that it's just an entryway into our broader discussion of what the heck is going on with Disney World and Reedy Creek. Again, cannot fully corroborate this, but we have this from sources that we trust. Folks, we're in rumor and speculation for a moment, and we're going to enter into legal theory. I'm told that these little name badges, that they actually come from the same place, and that they are inscribed and etched upon from a Disney backstage area next to the monorail barn, that Reedy Creek and Disney share that same manufacturing. And so this is just sort of the start, I think, of how intertwined these are, that you've got an independent government entity which is sharing just this little thing, right? This is a little bitty. But I think that it's a great example of how this goes all throughout the company, where they were intertwined and intersharing all of these various services and protocols and procedures. And I'm not so sure at this point that there was a great delineation inside the company, inside Reedy Creek. And in fact, Andrew, we are having sources come to us and allege that even inside Disney, inside the directories for their employees, that there's actually a tag that one could find Reedy Creek inside Disney employment. Now, I'm going to give out something that's, well, let's just say it. I am told that there is a company code 1688 and that, although I cannot corroborate this, I am told that Reedy Creek Energy is perhaps within that, and that Reedy Creek RCID has been moved inside the employee directory, perhaps the old employees. Again, I'm having to go off what I'm being told by a source that is very, very good, but I can't corroborate this. But that it has been moved now into a spot that you would not suspect, which is Disney Photo Imaging. Not the place you would tend to suspect that would go, but that's the location now inside the directory for some of these employees who were not necessarily supposed to be employees. Andrew, I feel nervous just talking about some of this stuff. Why don't you take it away and walk us through what are the dangers of Disney having potentially been so intertwined with a government entity?
Do we want to give Andrew a little bit of time to think there on company codes, what that means from an internal standpoint?
From an internal standpoint, that aside, let's go a little bit broader before we go so narrow, because there's a lot of finer points here. So in a very broad sense, there's a lot of potential issues. First of all, you have to think about, in terms of the intertwining, the intermixing, as a whole, as a general spirit, as a concept, you cannot do that. That's violative of Florida law to intermingle or co-mix the public and private funds. And where this really boils over is when you start having a transfer of products, goods, services, things that are of value between private and public parties. You have to make sure that you're going through things like public bidding processes. So if you're going and purchasing something from, let's say, a contractor, you're saying you're going to be our contractor for all of our uniforms or all of our badges or whatever else, and you're a government, you have to bid that out. You have to go through a bidding process, an RFP process, or at least, hey, take the top 3 bidders. Is Disney really the cheapest to provide that good or service? Were they the best option to provide these badges? Now, something like a badge may seem trivial, but the thing is, if Disney has been providing these things since time immemorial, you have to say, okay, over the years, this has in the aggregate been a large amount. And you can actually see in those invoices that we had, for example, there was the tickets, which were billed out at half a million per quarter. But on that same invoice, there was actually a small little line item which said awards, right? So Reedy Creek Awards. And so they were actually paying Disney to print and create their awards, and they're paying them a couple $1,000s a quarter for that. So, a couple $1,000 a year, right, in the aggregate. So that being said, these are all things that, hey, did they bid these out? Did they actually put these out to the through the right process? Because governments are not supposed to be intertwined with private industry, particularly the industry that they are governing. It's particularly problematic because not only are they supposed to govern Disney because they cover that Reedy Creek government covered Disney, but also all the other hotels in there, all the other properties, every other property owner within their boundaries, which is not just Disney. Disney is the largest, but not the only. And they have a duty to deal with them fairly. But on top of that, Disney was also a contractor. They're receiving government money. And in order to receive government money, you have to go through public bidding processes. You have certain fiduciary duties. You have to avoid nepotism. You have to avoid gifts. Were they doing these badges? Were they giving away these badges for free? What was the financial arrangement? I would love to see that. It's how deep does the rabbit hole go? Now, to be very clear, doing something like purely listing RCID members on a phone directory, that in and of itself, by itself, is not necessarily criminal. However, when you start, for example, let's say there's a billing code, right? And of course, we have to look at what this number was used for, right? But if it was used for, let's say, billing, well, that might be a problem, right? So you have to look at how that was used. But we do have to be careful because we have to be very clear. Reedy Creek, as the government, right, RCID, is one thing. But there was also this Reedy Creek Energy Services, RCES, which is actually a subsidiary of Disney. They're actually a wholly owned subsidiary of Disney, and they're the ones that do all the wastewater, water. They take care of all the utilities. So we have to be very careful, and perhaps your source, you have to be very, very careful because perhaps your source can confuse between RCES, which is allowed to be Disney, although there's several questions about whether or not they fairly bid out their contracts and et cetera, et cetera. RCES, which is this company they formed to do the utilities, versus RCID, which is the actual government itself, right? And the actual government employees, which have a duty to be separate from Disney. So a lot on the bone there, but a lot of potential crimes in summary.
So Andrew, let's take a look then. I think that's a great point and a great segue to a document that I'm going to show you. This is a map of everything that,
yes.
And let me move everybody.
I've seen this one before.
So this is a map. It's made by TitleMax. We actually looked up to see where this thing came from, but TitleMax seems to have sourced it from Disney. Now we can't prove that exactly, right? Because you get into questions of who did what and how did they get this and who did they call. At the bottom, though, again,
yes.
Remember now, this is listing out ESPN. It's listing out Disney Studio Services, Chinese Holdings. Boy, isn't that interesting? It's listing out all kinds of things. Down here at the bottom, though, listed out as if they own it. You're exactly right. Reedy Creek Energy Services is listed down here as if Disney owns it, and it's a subsidiary, so fair enough.
So that's fair enough, yeah.
This is listed out as if Disney owns two cities, Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista, and that they are part of the Reedy Creek Improvement District. So what's going on with this graphic? People have had questions about it. What do you make?
Well, they're saying the quiet thing out loud, which is they indeed do own it because they're the ones who set up that cul-de-sac. They're the ones who placed the employees there, and there's the ones who have had these two little sham cities, which encapsulate most of the theme parks as well as Disney Springs, right? So those two little cities, right, encapsulate those in terms of the regulation. So, the Magic Kingdom's covered, Disney Springs is covered in terms of those cities' jurisdiction, right? But we all know they've been Disney. We all know that's what Disney's covered, and we all know that's what Disney is concerned with, is control over those cities. Now, by putting those there, I think they really do put themselves in hot water because they say, hey, look, these were never independent in the first place. These were always our captured miniature governments that are captured. I think that is very problematic, particularly when you're thinking about the amount of bond money they've used, the amount of public funds they've used specifically for those jurisdictions. And they've been required not just to think of themselves as a private entity, but think about the public, think about the public interest, think about the people, all the property owners within the boundaries of those jurisdictions, of those governments. So,
Andrew,
yeah, this is definitely very problematic.
Can a private corporation own a U.S. city?
No, that is completely illegal, not okay. And it's absolutely unheard of. It's unprecedented.
Based on Bob Iger's statements. Based on Bob Iger's statements where he conflates the freedom of speech attack against, we assume against Reedy Creek, perhaps against these cities. Given that he has conflated Disney with those, do you believe that Bob Iger believes that Disney owned Reedy Creek Improvement District or the cities which govern Reedy Creek Improvement District?
Based on, I do genuinely believe that Iger at that time had a misunderstanding that they believe that they own them, and I do believe the corporate culture was that we own that, that's ours. You can't take that from us, and I think that's why they got so up in the air, because they effectively. And once again, there's de jure and de facto, right? So in the law and in fact, they have controlled those for over 70 years, right? So they've controlled those for a significant period of time. They've had free reign. It's only now that, hey, this is being called into question, and they're getting some pushback.
Well, this is part of the history of the company. The legend of the Florida project is that, oh yeah, look at what we did, guys. We set up these cities that, by the way, we fully control what's going on here. There's been this, as we often joke about the quiet part out loud. The quiet part of this is that there were these legendary trailers somewhere on the property, and Disney controls those people. That is, in order for people across the United States to be aware of that, that is an open secret. And now they've run afoul of and until they had they stepped into politics, all of a sudden, oh, by the way, that arrangement that you have had for all of this time that everyone has been winking at, I think we're going to stop winking.
Yes.
Lorena, do you want to talk about, Lorena, how careful one has to be when working with government entities on not accepting gifts of any major substance?
Yeah, I can speak from my background. My background, of course, is engineering, and I did some work through a company that I will call Stark Industries that had dealings with foreign governments. And it was very much impressed upon us that when dealing with foreign officials or government entities, even in the US, you could not, there were rules around certain around gifts, so to speak. It had to be something, I think, like less than $20, and that was about it. It's been a while since I've had this training, but that was it. But you couldn't give things like, say, sports tickets, cash, things like that, because that would be seen as a bribe and extremely improper. And especially when dealing with some foreign governments, where some of them, that's how some of them do business, but we could not do business that way. So that is a big no-no when doing that.
Well, I think there were
Matt,
some.
I could take all those bribes from foreign officials. It's very frustrating.
There were some no-nos, I think, going on at Disney. Let's take a look at this out of Insider. This coming out today by Rebecca Cohen, Brent Griffiths, and John L. Dorman. And I want to talk about the perhaps deceptiveness of this narrative. Disney's firefighters backed DeSantis as he feuded with the company. Now his board ignored their pleas and stripped away their park benefits. Not here to take a political position, folks, but I don't think that this is a legitimate narrative. I think this is being skewed in a particular direction. Here's what it says. Disney World's first responders once backed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' plan to assume control of the Reedy Creek Improvement District, which formerly had autonomous control. Autonomous. It was its own thing. Over the land that Disney occupied. Anything has got to be better than what we currently have. Tim Stromsnys, communications director of the Reedy Creek Professional Firefighters Local 2117 Union, told the Orlando Sentinel in January. The idea is to make him look like a buffoon now by making it seem as though all of their benefits are being stripped away. Now firefighters are having second thoughts after the new oversight board moved to strip them of special Disney perks they've had for decades. Last week, the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, CFTOD, the rebranded Reedy Creek Board, not true, revoked all of the firefighters' free passes to the Disney parks and resorts. First responders told Miami Times Online makes visits to the theme parks unaffordable now. I want to address a couple of things in this, and I want to hand it over to Andrew. Thing number one, the firefighters and other personnel working for the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board, they were given a massive pay raise in the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, which essentially moots this point because they are being given an amount far in excess of the cost of an annual pass. So even if they lose their annual pass, their overall increase is substantially more, and they can buy many of those passes now on their own with their private funds.
Yes.
Andrew.
There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues. This is pretty much a complete lie. So okay. Everything you read there is complete. Completely
let's get in. Let's get into the lie. Before we do though, preface it this way. Let's get into it this way. Andrew, why did the new board have to get rid of this quote unquote benefit?
Right. So first of all, it's not a benefit. A benefit is something very specifically articulable under law. So it's not something that is like compensation. It's not a retirement benefit. It's not health. It's not something that is permissible to be called a benefit because it is illegal, right? So anything that is illegal can therefore not be a benefit. And it is essentially a kickback to Disney. Now, this is an issue because Disney is the primary, is not just a constituent. Disney is not just a constituent of the government, but they also are a prime contractor. So there's somebody that is providing services to the district. So while they're also they're both a constituent and a contractor, and in both cases, there are conflicts that happen when you are kicking back benefits to a government, right? You have to go out and say, hey, is this something that we once again put out to bid? Is this something that is neutral? Is it benefiting everybody? Is it something that is on its face benefiting one business, or is it benefiting all? Can it be used neutrally? For example, if you gave somebody a gift card, like let's say it's a Visa gift card, right? And you can use that anywhere Visa is accepted, right? That's something that's neutral because you can go and spend that pretty much anywhere, right? You can go and spend that at Chick-fil-A, you can spend that at Universal or at Disney, right? You can spend that anywhere. But a Disney park ticket can only be used at Disney. It is not neutral at all. It's in fact entirely benefiting one business. And the presumption there is, as you all know, once you go to Disney, you're going to be buying things. You're going to be buying merchandise. You're going to be buying popcorn. You're going to be buying a $20 hot dog, right? So you're going to be doing all those things at Disney and staying in the Disney ecosystem, which once again solely benefits Disney. As a government, there are many property owners and interest holders, stakeholders in this process, including the state of Florida. And they say you cannot do that. You cannot give away a pass as a form of compensation. Now, what you can do is you can give people money. So when the lawyers that came in after they got rid of the Disney folks, after they kicked out of the RCID folks, they gave them the boot, right? The lawyers looked at this deal and said, this is illegal, as I would have told them. And I have said for while that a lot of the things we're doing are illegal, impermissible, unethical. They looked at this and said, this is illegal. This is a improper relationship, a misappropriation of public funds, which is a crime, right? So we need to stop this. Well, because Disney did this illegal thing for 60 years, the certain firefighters took it as a benefit. Now, let's be very clear. During this meeting, which I watched the entire meeting and went through it. If you guys want to do that, you can catch my channel. I did a longer stream on this specific topic, including listening to the whiny beta firefighters. But that being said, they're only this quote unquote benefit, i.e. these tickets, were only used by 69% of people. They only 69% even went once. And when they really looked at it, an even smaller percentage, only a minority, actually used them up to the true value of the ticket. Right? So they ended up giving them, saying, instead of giving you a pass, we're going to give you a stipend, right? Which is going to be annual renewable of $1,425 a year. So you can now use that money for whatever you please. You can use it for, going to get a very fancy dinner. You can go to Le Cellier if you wanted to, right? You can go have a nice Glen Floridian dinner, whatever you want to have. That's all on the table for you. Or you can go and buy an annual pass, or you can go and just put it in your pocket, give it to your kids, whatever else. So that solution was a neutral solution came up by lawyers because they literally cannot legally continue to do this thing. So the firefighters took this as a benefit. Some of them whined about it, but statistically, the majority of them benefit from this. So the majority of them probably are happy about it. And at the meeting, really only 3 firefighters complained about it, and then 2 other like rando folks that are probably
so it's a media narrative tool then.
Yes, correct.
My favorite part about that, and I watched it on your channel as well as a little bit on the actual YouTube channel, which it's great that SIFTOD is finally putting the sunshine that they should on these meetings. They used to be door. The guy who went through all of that, he said, I have 3 reasons that I want to talk about for why we're not doing this. And the first 2 reasons were well reasoned and about the benefit and the cost and the people who they were benefiting versus how much they were actually benefited. And the third one was, oh yes, and also legally we can't. It was very minor. And it was after why it wasn't a good idea to be doing it anyways. And then you end with, oh, by the way, absolutely not. We're not doing this. He was very gracious, and he said, hey, if we need to raise the amount that we need to be paying people, we'll raise it. If it turns out that we're paying too much, we're still going to keep it at the same benefit. He handled a bad situation with some people that were less than charitable to him, I think, in a very charitable way.
And mind you, this is shocking, because to come out there and say what we were doing was, probably illegal, right? Which is the strongest language you could have without actually saying, no, we've gone to a court of law and we've been found, guilty here. In the strongest possible language, saying that we can't do that. You never hear that. I have sat in hundreds of government meetings. I have never heard, we did something illegal, right? Those are words that don't come out of their mouth because they're still within the scope to be pursued on this legally. They're still on the hook legally for this in terms of criminal liability, in terms of civil liability. The district itself is on the line, so there's potential liability there. So I guarantee their counsel said, hey, this is the most you can say. Even that, if I was their counsel, I'd say, hey, be very careful about this. Don't say it. But the fact he came out there and said it, he said, as we say the quiet thing out loud, he said the thing we're all thinking, we all know. That to me is damning and very damning of Disney's behavior, and really opens up the potential for, once again, the Florida Inspector General, which is currently undergoing a criminal investigation, right, to look into these things and say, wait a second, how did they get into this arrangement, right? How did they get into this arrangement to such a formal extent that Disney's internal accountants are just invoicing this like it's a packet of hot fudge? I mean, they're dealing with this like they're dealing with a pair of Minnie Mouse ears, except for this one is a felony that can land you in jail for 30 years.
I'd also like to point out that the base level Florida resident Disney pass is only $400. And the high one that you can get in whenever you want, the one that's open to anybody to buy, is the $1,400 pass, the Incredipass. So,
and I think some of the complaints were, I think this may not be a 1-for-1, but this may have been more equivalent to the employee passes.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think one of the benefits that they are perceiving here is, I believe, that you could get in pretty much all the friends and family, and it was like you can let it, you get the pass and like the whole crew comes through, everybody comes through, versus with an annual pass you've got to buy it for every individual, right? So like each individual has to have a family pass, so they can't take all their their 4 kids, grandma, grandpa, and 6 of their aunties and uncles, right? They've got to now have passes. So some of the ones that are hyper that visit a lot are mad, right? The ones that visit like normal people and not like Disney adults, I think they're just fine.
So Andrew, let me ask you a question, and I'm going to be excuse me, I'm going to be exceedingly careful how I say this, because this allegation comes from one of our highest sources that we have, period. And I don't know, I can't corroborate this allegation at all. So I'm just going to ask you, if this were occurring, what would it mean? Okay, not that it is occurring, not that it has occurred, but if it were, what would it mean? So we're going to be careful how we do this. Here's the allegation. Again, I don't know that it's true. Apparently there were silver passes. I don't know what, but there are passes that are unusual.
Yes.
That's what's being alleged. And they were given
silver pass, main gate pass. Those are types that are like employee related. Yes.
They are given, apparently there were times when they were given for free, and those passes provided for discounts in such a way that Disney did not keep up with who used them, or nor did they have a way for tracking the discounts that were applied to these. Don't know about that. The allegation is that this was not about giving perks to people. The allegation, again from a source, not from me, says that due to them receiving tax dollars paid by taxpayers and then using this for this purpose, Disney had in some way created a system where they were collecting taxes from guests and then not remitting those to the state. And for a long time, it was about increasing revenue in some way. Do you have your thoughts on that allegation? I don't have any way of corroborating that. We're out in theory, but what do you think?
Yeah, of course, that's theory land. You need to see some hard facts on that. Show me the invoice, show me the Carfax. But assuming that there's an audit, Mexican Iron Man gets in there with 2 chalupas in a legal pad and finds
never
finds
forget
the
your
numbers,
chalupa,
right? And finds the numbers. If we had the proof there, once again, everybody, even Disney, even the rat, deserves its day in court. But assuming you could prove that, there would be tax fraud, right? That is tax fraud. That there is state criminal charges. Folks are going to jail for that. So that is 100% not okay. If, like, for example,
and you understand why I'm being so careful.
That they were, yes, and I'm saying allegedly, right? Specifically, hypothetically, right? We're in hypothetical land, hypothetical lawyer land.
100%.
In those hypothetical scenarios where you're not, for example, paying state income tax, let's say, or you're trying to create a scheme to defraud the state of income tax, yeah, that's a crime. So that's a people go to jail in sparkly bracelets crime, for sure.
Do you think, Andrew, that we get to a point where people are at risk of going to jail for some of the stuff that's potentially out there?
I think no. At this point, we're beyond that. I think we are beyond the point at which people are at just mere risk. I think we have a probability that there is a prosecution, there's a case that we go through it, people are tried. I think at this point, when you look into it, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And some head has to roll here, right? Somebody has to come to task for, hey, why did you do all these things you were not legally allowed to do that were illegal for years? Somebody has to come to that. Even if, hey, they're charges, right? Just like anything else, there's charges, and maybe there's a plea deal. Maybe there's a settlement agreement, right? Some sort of plea deal where you say, okay, I'm going to plead guilty on this, but, don't throw me in jail for the rest of my life. Because when you look at these crimes as an aggregate, particularly for the RCID employees, they have a lot of liability here. Also, for their former counsel, and for the Disney counsel that served as co-counsel. So the Disney counsel that served as co-counsel said, no, you can do this. There's a lot of potential liability and ethical problems here. Of course, we need to see the proof of this, but this absolutely would get those folks in trouble. And we do have a very large possibility of criminal proceedings.
Go ahead, Jonas.
I was just thinking about the great Ben Kingsley in Iron Man 3 when he said, before I go in, there are some people I'd like to roll on.
Lorena, walk us through, though. What do you think the average guest is going to think, or the average Disneyist fan is going to think, when this finally reaches the boiling point where the press can no longer hide it with cutesy little stories about firefighters being angry? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, you're always going to have that one pixie dust segment, which, my saying, pixie dust is a hell of a drug. You're going to have that group there, no matter what, they're not going to pay attention. But that's going to be a small percentage. Your average person is going to be like, are you kidding me with what's going on? Disney's brand recognition right now is in the toilet. There's no other way around it. Average people are just like, it doesn't have the shine that it once did. And this is yet another nail in Disney's coffin with respect to their public image.
All right, folks, what a fascinating conversation. The expertise of Andrew of Legal Mindset is something to behold, especially as we're talking about this forte that he has. Very few do. If you liked this conversation, if it was enlightening to you, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It is indeed that cute little notification bell, and oh, don't you want to click it? Another thing you may want to do is, drop a comment down below. We covet your comments. We care about what you think. We really do read them. We really do respond to many. And folks, don't forget that the Pro Show is only available for 48 hours after it is live every Thursday. However, members of the channel gain access to all of the Pro Show archives, every single show, every single minute available to those members. It's the price of a soda per month. You just have to click the little join button and you gain access to all that and much, much more. Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.